Hello and welcome to the Madecast, the official podcast of the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, a series of lectures on video game history as part of the Made's ongoing effort to preserve the history through teaching and displaying playable exhibits of rare games and consoles.
While life in the time of COVID has forced us to close our doors, the support of people like you has allowed us to continue to bring history to you through lectures and interviews like the one you'll hear in a few minutes. I'm Chun.
I'm Red.
And I'm Miles. Today, for something a little different for our 50th episode, Alex catches up with Travis Julyan, a longtime friend of his, about their memories of gaming over the years, wargaming, and how they have seen the industry change over the decades.
This was a really nice interview. It's kind of like it's almost like a long time interview of what we do at the end of the episode, just talking about what we've been playing. But this extends far longer than what recently has been played. It's great to hear two people so deep in the industry and in the sphere talk about everything that they've done over the years and the games that they still enjoy. They also touch on, like, briefly, like what does it mean? It's another conversation, but it's like, what does it mean for like the lifespan of a game? Like, how long can a game like stay relevant, or in the sphere of like competitive gaming as well. This was a really nice interview. It's great to hear someone chat with. It's always great to hear Alex and somebody talk so candidly with one another and just have such a great repertoire. This is very, very good interview, and I think everyone will enjoy the back and forth. It's a fascinating interview and a look into some great games. But first, we have some news for you. Ubisoft is reportedly making a new Splinter Cell game, almost 10 years since their first one. Splinter Cell Conviction was in 2010, and Splinter Cell Blacklist was in 2013. That was the last one released. I used to be a bit, like, when I was middle school and younger, I was a really big fan of the Splinter Cell games. I really liked the fighting aspect, but also just sneaking around and using just being able to sneak around in environments where there's tons of other people that you don't want to draw their attention.
Mm-hmm. In my experience in school, you were either a Splinter Cell fan or a Metal Gear fan. And I fell into the Splinter Cell camp. This story made more sense to me.
Yeah, made a little bit more sense.
I absolutely loved Conviction. It's one of my favorite stealth games of all time. Blacklist was also very good. I don't think it really hit the same level of stealthiness as Conviction, but it was still a great, enjoyable game. And I've been waiting for this announcement for years, so I'm very happy that we're getting more Splinter Cell.
Yeah, I mean, it also kind of reminds, it's slightly of the same camp as really early Ghost Recon games. Just you have a mission to accomplish, but it's not just go full force and like head on right into everybody. You need strategy and to sneak around. They nailed it with those games. I do gotta say, they nailed the tense feeling that you get walking around and trying to not get caught, and then the satisfaction of completing a mission was.
I almost thought they could merge the game to Rainbow Six the last time I see them having collaboration.
I think there was.
Yeah, they're putting Sam Fisher into Rainbow Six as an operator, which is used to be a very good news for the fans of Splinter Cell, but now they're having their own game. Yeah,
and the character is also just, I mean, for the strategy for Rainbow Six, I feel very much like it's like, oh, so this character can just hide in the wall and wait for somebody and then pop out and take him sneakily. Literally cuts a hole in the wall, hops in the wall, and then waits. But so we will be very excited to see what new Splinter Cell comes. Also, this little second piece of news. Hiroshi Ono has unfortunately passed at the age of 64. He was an original designer for the sprites for Galaga, Dig Dug, and Xevious. a legendary art producer in the industry. Some of his designs, I'm sure, have inspired generations upon generations of game developers. And we're very sorry to see you go. Thank you very much for everything.
There is currently a crowdfunding campaign to have a documentary made about his work and his life. I believe it's currently sitting at something like $30,000 raised.
Yeah, that would be, it would be a worthy story to tell and to get out to other people. His work is synonymous with so many games that you just see images of that you don't know who did it. Well, majority of people don't, which is unfortunate. But rest in peace, Hiroshi. Here's to telling your story in the future. Thank you for everything. And also thank you to the developers of God of War for releasing the new installment of the Norse mythology series on PC. Looks like early next year. So that'll be exciting. If you haven't had a chance to play the 2018 God of War on PS4, wait no longer. January of next year, we should be getting it on PC.
This is following in Sony's cycle of slowly releasing, like 4 years after the fact, their PS4 exclusives to PC, which I think is a great move on their part. It's showing a lot of goodwill.
Yes. Yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn was a roaring success on PC. People love it. And I'm going to pick up God of War. Like, I'm not going to buy a PS4 or a PS5, but I'm very happy that I can at least still play the games that they've made for it.
Yeah. And I got to see. Hopefully it's not too buggy based on, like, porting it to PC. But it's that was one of my favorite games. Of that time, it was God of War and Red Dead Redemption when they came out. I was blown away by both of them so much. Just storytelling, gameplay. It was so much fun, and it was really nice to see that, like, the end life of the PlayStation 4 gets some really, really fantastic entries. That can, that they both, like, God of War just pushed the PS4 to, like, oh man, I know the PS4 was good, but it looks amazing. It runs amazing. The gameplay is just insanely fun. You're gonna enjoy yourself when you play it on PC. It's a very good game.
It seems like every developer is starting to see this pile of money on a PC platform instead of just releasing it on one console or maybe two. Like, not only Sony is doing that, but also I think Sega have been doing that, and also Capcom has been switching their strategy. It's good news to us, but I keep my opinion on Nintendo. I think their games is at best on Switch.
I don't think Nintendo needs or ever will put their stuff on PC.
Their game is so designed for the Switch only, and if it gets out of Switch, it's not that fun anymore, in my opinion.
No, it's not. It's the way they design their console. It's such a unique experience to play with it. But I think that's all the time we have for the news today. So without further ado, here's a lovely conversation that Alex had with Travis Julyan. And here we go. The Alex and Travis Show.
And we are here with Travis Julyan. Travis is my oldest and dearest friend, and we were going to talk about growing up together playing games. Welcome, Travis.
Hey. Oh my God, recording old games, going down memory lane.
I know.
Wondering what happened to the gaming industry along the way.
The thing to note here is that actually you and I created a podcast 15 years ago and did like 6 episodes, and then we're done with it. So this is appropriate having you back here for episode number 50 of the Maids podcast.
Circles and circles.
So I remember on the floor in your room, you didn't you have a TV in your room with your NES?
Yes.
All right. So what games did you have? I know you had Jackal. That's the one that sticks out for me.
Jackal, Akio Warriors.
Oh yeah, Ikari.
Ikari or
Warriors.
Key?
Yeah.
Well,
I have no
Well,
idea.
it's-
It's spelled Ikari, but I've heard it pronounced Ikarai too.
depends where you're from, I guess. Let's see, what other? I mean, are we just talking about like? Well, I guess it was only 2v2.
Well, which were your favorites? I mean, like, which games do you remember?
No, you
fondly
hit it
there?
right on the head with Jackal. I think I'm trying to remember what the baseball games were, but that was just because it was the Orioles were finally on a winning series, so it was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And now they suck again.
Yeah, they're terrible. Plus, your brother was a big baseball fan.
Oh, he's
so
beyond.
I would
He
imagine
still
you two played
is.
baseball.
Like, it's amazing. But yeah, no, I remember though, like skipping up, like GoldenEye,
Oh well, yeah.
but that's
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the apartment in San Francisco. We'll get to Road Rash 64, which took up all of our time.
Tony Hawk. There you go.
Yeah, we did do a lot of Tony Hawk. But I wanted to start even further back. Like, what about Steel Panthers? You and I used to play Steel Panthers too, right? Like all the
Gary
time.
Grigsby.
Oh my God, that game was so deep.
It's also refreshing. Like, if you think about it, in the sense of where that started with hex-based gaming and two-dimensional, and we've gone to a series like what's coming? Was it Company of Heroes 3, which is coming out, where they finally adapted it to be something closer to Total War.
Right? It's like all real time. It's completely different games. I mean, on every level.
Definitely. It's funny to think, but that time span is so short and how quickly it's expanded. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And even to think about, yeah, and I don't know if this is starting to get off track, but just like going from sitting in your room to the competitive gaming industry within not even 20 years, really.
Yeah, it's moved along incredibly quickly. But at the same time, it's still sort of the same flavor, right? That I would imagine that a person playing today, Company of Heroes, is able to evoke the same sort of sense that they could get from like a Steel Panthers World War II simulation at the time, right? Like maybe it's a more graphical experience, certainly, but like I remember just getting really absorbed in those battles. But never mind close combat. I mean, close combat was probably the best of those, I think. But I mean, close combat compared to Company of Heroes, I mean, they are kind of very similar games. That's a lot closer than Steel Panthers.
Yeah. But then, yeah, with commands and sort of micromanagement. And I guess that's what came back to sort of like the comparison of there had to be micromanagement in Steel Panthers versus Call of Duty, or not Call of Duty, but Close Combat, where it was point and click versus, okay, are you going to, well, I want you to move 3 spaces this way, then pop smoke, then, so.
And good luck if they actually do it, too. Right?
Yeah.
Which was the big innovation there. I mean, that was a genuine difference between the previous generations, right? Like Close Combat added the fact that giving a squad a command did not mean they were actually going to be able to execute it, or would they even, get near executing it. Where in, Steel Panthers, the only way that wouldn't happen is if they'd been routed and they were running away.
Yes. Yeah. Artillery. Or the old tradition of just stacking Tiger tanks in a line and just okay, walk right into it.
Yeah, right. No, you Steel Panthers. It was never a competition. You always stomped me. I feel like Close Combat for a time there, it was at least I could hang, but you have by far exceeded me in that game too. You've always been able to kick my ass in World War II games.
Well, times have changed. I think nowadays, that's the other side to it. Is there that level of strategy thinking versus, and I guess it gets into sort of a conversation about sort of playing with other vet friends, where you have games now that are very specific with their meta in terms how to win.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, World of Warships specifically. You're talking about here, probably. Yeah.
That's one, but I think it can be applied to other things.
Tell me about your clan and the guys you play with. You play with a bunch of other guys who are in the Army, the Navy,
they're an interesting group with the sense of it goes from colonels from the Vietnam era who were active and regular Joe duty guys to
active in the Army or the Navy.
They were in the Army. I'm trying to
see. That's what I find so weird.
There's some guys that were Navy.
Okay.
But
it's a boat game. I mean, it's a Navy game.
But it's strategy and there's a level of camaraderie. And that's sort of the side, even though World of Warships has completely become way too toxic. But it kind of keeping with the sense of games with specific metas that are kind of, I don't want to say controlled by whatever the company is. Like there's definitely that sort of, you're going to do this way because you have to shell out so many dollars to make to min-max whatever ship or whatever the platform is in order to maximize. And again, it comes down to like DPS, which is always amazing to me versus strategy or tactics.
Yeah, the DPS is what people lom onto. Isn't there some kind of drama going on there? Didn't they just reintroduce a ship or something? Can you explain that?
Not off the top of my head, because I needed to take a break from it. And that's, I mean, like that's the other side to it too, is that you have these companies that push games and it burns you out, which shouldn't, I mean, like the moment a game feels like work, that's a problem. And if you can't catch up to that, that's a problem.
That's, I mean, interesting you mentioned that. Now, do you feel that World of Warships feels like work all the time, or is that just what happens when you're up at the high tiers that you're in and people expect you to be really, really together and not screw up? Or...
Yes, and I think it's also sort of, I mean, it was different for, I guess, us, because when we were competing, and we stopped competing, but we were out to have fun. And the bottom line was to kind of screw with whatever the meta was for that cycle of the match.
I love that. Go in the opposite direction of the meta just to play with people.
What we did one season, and we all loved it. Even it kind of worked for a little bit because no one was expecting it. But it got into this concept, and it gets into World of Warships, where you have everyone, how much damage do I do? How much damage do I did? And how many ships I sank?
DPS, the DPS.
Right. But the other side to it too, and it's sort of the thing that all the guys kind of listened to me. When you play that World of Warships, and specifically, it's not, you don't win the game by sinking the most ships. You win by controlling space. You control by the capture points. And what we did for, I think it was like 2 seasons, and it was okay. We got kicked sometimes, but we went all destroyers.
That's beautiful.
And what we did was we would bounce from cap zone to cap zone. We would flood an area with torpedoes to force part of the detachment or whoever was challenging us away from a zone. We would cap it, and then we would fall back behind it to see. And since it was destroyers and the torpedo effect, and that's what the guys started to realize when I was telling them, it's you control space.
And that's, I mean, the destroyers can move faster than the other ships. You'll never hit a destroyer from a battleship.
Right.
You'll never hit it with a torpedo run. You'll never hit it with an air. I mean, maybe a dive bomb.
Right.
Run.
And radar. And also, and that's where the guys got good.
Oh, you'll never see them too. Yeah. You'll never see them.
We knew, and again, it comes back to that moment of controlling space. You have to know the mechanics of what the other ships are. And that's where I think all of us kind of pulled together, because it was that statistical baseball side guy thing, like
the money ball. You were playing money ball.
Exactly. It gets into, this ship's radar is going to go out 9 kilometers. Okay, I have to be at this, and also knowing timing too. Like you had to know, okay, their radar is going to be up for 30 seconds. After that 30 seconds, then I can move in, then pop back out. So again, we did okay. We surprised a lot of people. I mean, there was teams that afterwards they would type to us and be like, "We hate you so much because we pulled it off." There was we ran into a couple other clans that were trying to do it, but they couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, it takes a lot of coordination because you all have to move as a swarm.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, you can't have one destroyer up at the other capture point. You need those torpedoes down at the bottom because you're going to get 1 or 2 sinks just flooding that first area.
Yeah,
right?
and that was the other side to it too. Was we would hit and we would try to volley. So if we got one ship to hit and it didn't damage it, but the next volley that would hit the ship and cause a flood. So you have that damage over time versus DPS. And we were always trying to hit, because that's infuriating to know that you're going to sink no matter what. And that's what we were always trying to kind of look for.
Honestly, that's a great metaphor for the World War II situation in the Pacific anyway, because there are a lot of boats in battles that knew they were going down and are firing their guns until the last gun goes under the water.
And that's also sort of, I think, where the guys kind of started to get away from the game too, because you have a bunch of guys that were very historic, it amazed me, these guys' attention to detail, where even military army guys wouldn't think, but there was always this value of historical accuracy, and it just started to pull away from the game. Maybe the first 2 or 3 years where things were very straight, but that, again, that kind of also gets into the interesting aspect of what's the shelf life of a game.
Yeah, right. How long can they keep refreshing and making it interesting? I mean, honestly, the appeal I always found for that game is that it's an old person shooter.
It's very, and that's the other side too, is that you run into the problem, and especially with you and me, where I guess we're sort of in-betweeners, where we're that Gen X generation that can kind of relate to older people, but still are enough in the pop culture, especially pop culture of games. Even in the movie I was telling Free Guy, to me, it wasn't a movie. The funny thing was all the relatable games and little tidbits in that movie that you're just oh, whoever wrote this was a gamer. You could tell.
Yeah.
That there was.
You could tell. You're absolutely right. You could tell that movie was written by somebody who knew the culture and was not just bolting it onto something.
Right. It's the little subtle things that you're oh, you're such a noob. That aspect that just it got the gaming sort of subculture right on.
So, all right, now I want to go back. Now we can talk about the N64. Road Rash 64 is probably the most crudely, absolutely, it's horrible that people don't know this game and if it exists, because as a single player experience, it's whatever. But as a 4-player experience, we played the crap out of that game.
Oh my God. Who was the room? What was the night where we made up? Wait a minute. That was the motorcycle one.
Yeah.
Where you could spike someone.
Yeah, you could spoke jam. You could stick your.
Who did
who
did?
Was it Thomas?
It was Thomas. Where in a midair jump and everyone was oh.
I know so one of the things that was great about that game was the elasticity of the racing. When you were playing 4 players, it did not matter. The actual race of it was just thrown out the window, because if somebody was behind,
it's all about being personal.
Elastic.
That game, there was nothing about racing. It was just everything was personal.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that was designed that way. What I'm saying is, if you got behind, it would speed you up.
Right,
you wouldn't notice it, but it would elastic you right back up with the posse. So, the game was designed to keep all 4 players right together, so you would just constantly beat the crap out of each other until somebody fell over. That was brilliant, and absolutely brilliant addition to that game.
No, you hit it around the head. Definitely. That's very true.
The spoke jam. Remember, I think it was the 2 yellow buttons you had to push together to do the spoke jam.
Something
but
like that.
Yes, resistance. Because the bike would just go flying, and the guy, What was that? Remember Fat Spider-Man was one of the skins we would use?
Yes, Fat Spider-Man. There was also the Harley version, which was, you could tell there was just no way.
Yeah, you couldn't use the Harleys in that game. They were worthless.
It was all about the rice rocket.
Yeah, exactly. No, the Harleys, I guess they were tough and they were fast, but they couldn't turn and you just go flying off the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a Harley would.
Yeah, right. The other game we used to play all the time was Duke Nukem 3D on the Max. Remember we put it in everybody's room? We had Ethernet running down the halls.
Yeah, that's the thing with Duke Nukem. You can't get away with that type of shooter nowadays. It just broke too many PC.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, this PC stuff
who
aside,
made Duke? Was that Capcom?
No, that was 3D Realms, and they made Duke Nukem Forever, and they originally it was GT Interactive, if you remember them. But that game as a deathmatch game was spectacular.
Yes, the rocket. It was all about the long shot rocket.
Oh, I like the shrink ray. I'd always step on it.
Yeah, there aren't too many games with that kind of diversity or humorous weapons, I guess would be where you're just like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, they're out there. There was one in like mid 2000s where there was like a shark gun. I can't remember what it was called.
It wasn't in like Quake.
No. But now that Quake's back out, we need to fire that one up. But all right, so you and I continue to play games to this day. So what do we play as recommendations for, the co-op crowd out there who are looking for games to play?
Dude, you and I are... Wildlands is still kind of surprised. I was very surprised you got into it as much as you did. I was like, I was not expecting this.
So the thing that turned me off about Wildlands is the setting and the story and all that stuff. That's just awful. It's just god awful. It's like somebody read 3 pages of a Tom Clancy novel and was like, I got this. Hold my beer. But
exactly.
Everything else in that game is terrific and is up to AAA quality. It is polished. It is fun. It has been played through and tested to the point where, there are bugs, but it's not like Bethesda style bugs. You know what I mean? It's not like Skyrim.
Yeah.
And then we just have fun, man. It's a fun game. And we've invented the handy maneuver of driving a car directly into the front of whatever mission it is, losing the mission and starting over.
Well, now we know.
Yeah, right. We played some Foxhole. What'd you think of Foxhole?
It's there, but I think, again, it gets into that question of attention to detail and learning curve.
Yeah. I honestly think that the next 10 years, we will see Foxhole redone 20 different times in 20, like a first-person Foxhole, a VR Foxhole. This is the model for the online MMO war for future.
Maybe. We'll see. It depends on the trench warfare aspect. Again, getting back into sort of that question of meta. You know what I...
Yo, well, my God, that game's all meta, right? Like every war, it's a different meta. And that's not going to change for any future version of Foxhole. Like you said, the longevity requires the meta to be played.
Yeah. Or for companies at least to make money,
Yeah, that's the thing is like the meta, it's dials, right?
Right.
Is it fun? Is it making money? And I guess you feel like World of Warships has kind of turned it too far to the money side, then the fun is gone.
Well, and that's and sort of a broader spectrum, even sort of talking about games about Baldur's Gate, but also Baldur's Gate 3, where the potential's there, but the question of, and this is a timing thing for like you and I, where there was never an alpha release. The game was done when it was released. You maybe...
Baldur's Gate 2 or the original Baldur's Gate. Yeah.
Well, you get into that sort of... games being released now that they know can make money, but it's not polished, like Star.
Oh, well, yeah. Specifically, this is when we were playing Baldur's Gate 2 this weekend. It was a terrific experience. We had a lot of fun. And honestly, it wasn't all that different from Baldur's Gate 3. You can do just about the same things. However, Baldur's Gate 3, every time we played it, we would get some progress, and then it would be like, okay, that's it. That's all it's in this version. And then they release a new version, and they disable, they destroy the old saves.
Right.
Like, they're not backwards compatible. So, forget it. That's why I'm not touching Baldur's Gate 3 till it's actually done. And it's just sort of a discipline thing, I guess, on the part of the gamer, right? To not go in on these early releases until they're done. And you have to make the judgment based on each game because they're all in different states.
Yeah, definitely. But that gets into sort of, I don't want to say like stalking, but like there's definitely an aspect to companies now sort of, I guess that's sort of like the standard with computer games. Like, where is the standard of a product being qualified to engage the consumer so that, it's a game that's quality, like, yeah, BG3's quality, but it's still got a lot of problems.
And there's giant chunks missing, and it's basically a free open world game. So why would you start it until the world's done?
Right.
They should just basically have a disclaimer or something. I mean, early access is not sufficient to explain anymore, because I know some early access games that are brilliant and polished and basically done.
Such as?
Well, Foxhole.
Oh, well.
I mean, it's not even 1.0 yet, right? Like, and it's already hockey sticking. The community's going crazy because there's going to be wait times and queues now because people are just, it's hockey sticking.
Well, and that also gets into sort of the other problem with gaming where, yeah, popular, but there's something about finding that, you're at the bottom level and you can be part of a game that builds up, sort of
getting into the ground floor.
Yeah, where you don't have that, like, oh my God, Diablo, like that, the first original, like no one knew about it, then all of a sudden it just boom, and there was no early access. It was one of those games that you went into a store and you kind of just saw the cover and you're like, oh, I gotta try that,
right? And at the time it was like roguelikes did not exist anywhere. I mean, not that they didn't exist, but like roguelikes were not a thing. You couldn't go out into the store and buy anything with procedurally generated anything.
Right.
Yeah, it was so different. It stood out. But unfortunately, we have overgone our 20 minutes, Trav. But thanks for being here, man. It's been good catching up.
All righty. That was a marvelous interview. Thank you very much, Travis, for giving us some time to chat with an old friend of yours. And it was great to hear everything. It was very fascinating to hear about their strategy with World of Warboats, I believe was the name of the game.
Warships.
World of Warships.
Boats.
It just destroying the meta of the game in order to beat other people. That's pro gamer move. No noobs here. It was a lovely conversation, and thank you guys for doing that. So I think that is also about all the time that we have today, right? I don't think we got much more time for talking about any other games we've been playing, unless we have anything else.
Now we're going to have to save Metroid Dread talk for next time, but I have things to say.
Yes, things will be said, and loudly, but we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for listening to the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment's official podcast. If you have any thoughts, questions, corrections, or general museum ideas, please shoot us an email at info@themade.org.
We'd like to send out a big thank you to everyone who donated recently and to our Patreon supporters who keep the Made afloat. Patreon donors get to listen to this podcast 1 week before it's released on major streaming services, and we continue that with future episodes every week.
Starting today to celebrate episode 50 of the Madecast, we'd like to shout out a couple donors at the end of every podcast. This week, the lucky donors we would like to thank are Armand Massimini and Chris Fritz. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your continued support and your continued listening. The Made will be opening its doors. There's no discernible time frame at the moment. We're just trying to see what we can get. But thank you very much. We will be back. Our doors will be open. But until next time, I'm Red.
I'm Chin.
I'm Miles.
Thanks.